Hello and welcome to this episode of the Off Ramp Project. I'm very excited to have two of the three authors of a new book called Beyond the Politics of Contempt: Practical Steps to Build Positive Relationships in Divided Times. And I love that it's practical because a lot of people have ideas, but they don't have a step-by-step plan. And this book has a step-by-step plan to help you learn how to depolarize yourself. I'm talking with author Doug Teschner, who served as a Republican state representative for New Hampshire for 6 terms, and also as the Assistant Secretary of State for New Hampshire. Doug also worked overseas in the Peace Corps, and he's now a volunteer regional leader of Braver Angels, which I talked about in episode 8. And he's a dedicated naturalist, hiker, and mountain climber. Welcome, Doug. I also have Beth Malow, who's a neurologist and researcher who grew up in a liberal Jewish household on Long Island, then lived and worked in Ann Arbor, then Nashville, and now Vermont. So she's been in many different political situations and environments. She's a volunteer with Braver Angels, and she brings her work as a science educator to this conversation about how to connect across differences during these deeply polarized times. There's a third author, and she's not with us today, but she's Becky Robinson, and she's the CEO of a book marketing and production company called Weaving Influence. Becky joined in to support Doug and Beth with Beyond the Politics of Contempt on the morning after the 2024 presidential election. She said, okay, this book needs to be a thing. Okay. Welcome to both of you, and thank you for stepping into the fray with actual, actionable, functional approaches to the ways that we've all been separated from each other and told that the people on the left and the people on the right, whichever side we're on, the other side's hopeless. And you can't talk to them because A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you can't talk to them. So I wanted to find out, besides working with Braver Angels and doing this book and going out to talk about this book, how do you keep yourselves active and hopeful? Because I see a lot of hopelessness and a lot of people just retreating from public life, retreating from political life. How do you protect yourselves from the polarization that's surrounding us all the time, everywhere?
Wow, well, that's a great question, and we're delighted to be here. I mean, people need hope. If there's one word that I would like to resonate on this call, it's people need hope. And I even heard something the other day with the Gallup organization that they're asking what are the things that employers need? What are they looking in the workplace? And the number one thing is hope. So I think it permeates more than the politics, and people are in a sort of a place of despair.
Yeah.
So trying to give people a hopeful roadmap for Americans trying to make sense of this dark moment, and the goal is really to transform the politics of fear and contempt into the politics of hope, because there are practical things we can do.
Yeah.
I would
Thank
just,
you.
yeah, I would just add that it's, I know I'm a little unusual. I'll just say that, but I actually relish conversations with people who are different than me and try to use curiosity. Um, I I think it's because when I do that, I recognize that we're all in this together, and I see a lot of humility and just graciousness in other people, regardless of who they voted for or what positions they have on contentious issues. So for me, I get my hope from having those one-on-one conversations, not on social media,
Oh,
but
no.
right, exactly. But one on one with my neighbors, my friends, my colleagues, people I sing with, people I play pickleball with. And, it's interesting because as a moderate who leans a little bit left, I feel like I have the opportunity to talk to both conservatives and progressives who are different than me.
Mhm.
and really relish the opportunity to learn from them.
I like that. In the book, you write about the exhausted majority in America. Who are these exhausted major people?
Go
Well,
ahead, Jack.
that's not, we didn't coin that term. That actually came from a study, the Hidden Tribes Report. And it was a 2018 study, and they really analyzed people across the political spectrum and put them in, I think they got 7 different categories. And they found that the groups on the extremes, both on the left and the right, are the most vocal and the most dominant, and they dominate the news cycle.
Yes.
But the majority of the people are in this exhausted majority that want something better, but they don't really they don't hear those kind of voices, which is why one of the reasons we're just writing this book. We think it's so important.
Yeah.
We want to give hope to well, we're reaching out to everybody, but especially to that exhausted majority who are, well, what can I do right now? And how can I feel better about my country and about my own mental health?
Yeah.
And about relationships. I
Yeah.
mean, these are things that we're trying to give people a little hope about and some really practical steps.
Yeah. During the first Trump presidency, I was seeing everything that was coming on news and social media, and it was dire. Everything was on fire, like it is now. But I live in a neighborhood with a lot of Republicans. And the way that I knew it was because they were arguing about Michelle Obama taking salt out of their favorite restaurant meals. I was like, I don't think she did that, you guys. But it's one of the best neighborhoods I've ever lived in my life. These people care about each other. They anything. When the fires came, I'm in Sonoma County where everything went on fire. We all took care of each other, and
Mm,
they kept me sane because I'm like, I know Republicans, I know conservatives, and they make
that's
our neighborhood this beautiful place. They have the best Halloween candy, right? It was knowing people that helped me maintain my cool.
absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean, it's great that you say that because I've heard people say, like, I've had Republicans tell me or liberals tell me about Republicans that, they don't believe in government and government helping people. But then when you talk with the conservatives, they say, well, we have communities that help people.
yeah,
So everybody has the same value of helping people. They may just have a different approach, which is more local than large government. And those are the kinds of conversations that give me hope, just like they've given
yeah,
you hope, because you see the humanity in people.
People are so siloed today.
yeah,
And isn't it ironic that, we have so many quote unquote friends, but they tend to sort of think the same as us, or at
yeah,
least on the surface. But they're also geographically siloed. I mean, there's data about this, how people are interacting much more with people who think the same as them. And it makes it so easy to fall into this us versus them sort of rubric of the way of thinking, and not to step back and we're so quick to make assumptions about people. And it's natural. I mean, let's face it, we do it. Somebody comes in a room and we start to do that, but to be really a little bit careful, to all be a little more aware of that. And we know from our work with Braver Angels that when people are actually put people in the room and they find out they have a lot more in common than they agree with. I mean, I've had many of these workshops where people said, gee, I didn't think we had that much and I realized we have a lot more in common. But if they're not in the space and in a respectful, it's got
yeah,
to be a respectful climate with like
yeah.
how you treat each other, like the Braver Angels way,
Mhm.
or people who know how to moderate discussions. We can open our eyes, and yet we right now we're all in our little bubbles.
Yeah, I was realizing a lot of people on the left. I live in a very, very liberal leftist community. It's in Sonoma County. And the idea is we're going to get rid of those guys, right? We're going to get rid of those guys. We're going to put liberals in control of government and then everything's going to be good. I said, hold on. No, it's not. It's not going to be good if we're at each other's throats and we are dehumanizing each other. That doesn't go away. That needs to get fixed, no matter who's in charge, right? Because if we can't talk to each other and we're so easy to polarize into groups, we're dangerous to ourselves and others. We are, we're patsies. I'm sorry, but
Yeah, yeah, but I just want to jump in here because, and I'm not a progressive, okay? I'm much more moderate.
yeah,
I am though a scientist and a researcher, and I have to say there is a lot of very strange stuff going on right now. Whether it's childhood vaccines for measles or some of the cuts to government funding
yeah,
for research. I guess what I'm trying to say is I definitely understand where the anger is coming
oh yeah,
from, the frustration is coming from. I feel very lucky to be living where I live and have established myself in my career. I guess what I'm trying to say is I understand where the anger is coming from. I think fear plays a huge role. Um, I I do not have a transgender child. I can only imagine, So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think we need to give some grace to people and realize that everybody's coming from a different place and fear plays a huge role. With that said, what I try to say to my friends on the left is it's not incompatible to be an activist, to protest,
yeah,
to go to a No Kings rally or whatever, and still be, I don't know if you want to use the term bridge builder, and in Brave Angels, we've been using the term courageous citizen.
hmm,
The ability to say, I'm going to speak my mind, I'm going to stand up for what I believe. I'm going to do it, though, in a way that's respectful and treats the person I'm talking with dignity and respect. And that's what we really try to get across in the book is that you
yeah,
can do that. In fact, I think you're going to have a better shot at convincing people about various things, whether it be climate change or childhood vaccines or whatever, if you don't treat them like they're ignorant, stupid, deplorable, whatever, and you
yeah,
really try to understand what their perspective is on a situation, and then explain things in a way that you're working together as opposed to the us versus them mentality.
yeah. It's so
Do you
hard to
agree?
get
Does that make
anything.
sense?
Yeah, it's so hard to get anything accomplished if people won't even consider that the other person is a human being with their own
Exactly.
ideas.
Well, we ask well, yeah, in chapter 8, we ask people to dig a little into their values. Who are you? What's important to you? And this is a great exercise for anyone. I mean, Brene Brown has done work like this, and other people, and list your values. What's important? Who are you? What do you want to? What do you really believe in? And Brene says you got to get it down to your top two values. Well, that's great. I've got the top two. But I mean, but I got other. I mean, I use growing. Growing with grace is the way I describe it. I mean, growing means I'm always trying to get better at it, and grace means to sort of embrace sort of my Christian values and how I think about others. But we have other values, and we all with all the authors went through this, and like courage and respect and kindness and authenticity. Authenticity in the sense of knowing who you, not just saying whatever you think, but just knowing who you are and what you're about.
And diplomacy. In other words, if you could be diplomatic, for me at least, I could be more authentic because if I'm mean to people, it doesn't work. I have to be diplomatic when I speak my mind. just who
So
I
when you take,
am.
so when you, so we suggest you go through that exercise, and then also now list the people on the other side of the political divide. Never mind the politicians. Just list their supporters. What are some words that you use to talk about them?
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, words come up like stupid or ignorant, or they don't look out for their best interests, and not patriotic and whatever. But
Yeah.
list those words out, and then sort of compare the two lists, and you say, I think most people would say, question maybe, am I living my values? Am I
Mhm.
really living my values, or am I only living my values on those people who are on my side of the political divide? And so entering into this work, it really starts within yourself, and it starts with a little introspection, and thinking about what it means to treat others with dignity and respect. Those are the terms we used. The Bible says, love your enemies. Well, love is a tough standard. We thought that, most of us can't quite live up to that. But civility, I hear, but that's too low a standard. But we think dignity and respect, that's good. I mean, treat people, if you can do love, that's great. But treat people with dignity and respect.
And
And
humility, be humble, right? And realize that you may not be on a higher moral ground.
yeah, people are
Wait,
kind
what?
of people are
No.
self-righteous. It's so sad. We all believe me. We do this. We don't want to sound like we're on a
Right.
pedestal, because we make these mistakes too. But there's a tendency to be so self-righteous, and humility is something that's so important, and curiosity are so important. And yet, whoever talks about humility anymore?
Yeah.
It seems to have gone out in sort of the lexicon of the vocabulary, and so this inner work is really important. But you can, we think you'll feel better about yourself, and then we can, develop some very practical skills to reach out to the other side, and have those conversations with Uncle Fred around the Thanksgiving Day table, and be an activist in a way that can move people to uh, move people to your side. And also the citizens-led solutions, which is this idea of, you can do things in your community that can really have an impact. And through it all, we want to give people a little hope. Okay, I can do this, and you don't have to do all those things. Don't get me wrong. Just a couple of little things. Just
Yeah.
yeah, share a little kindness.
What
It can matter a great deal.
what Doug's referring to with the citizen-led solutions, it's a new initiative by Braver Angels, and it's taking action at your local community to solve a local problem. One of the byproducts, though, is you hopefully are bringing together people who are diverse. And when I say diverse, it's not just racial, ethnic, religious diversity, socioeconomic. It's also political diversity and viewpoint diversity. And I wish we could re-engineer DEI to include that, right? I think
Yeah.
we'd bring a lot more people on board with it. And the idea is when you're all working together from different walks of life on something that affects your community, it strengthens not only the community in terms of the project, but the community in terms of the participants, because now everybody is on the same team, right? Rather than your red team and your blue team.
Yeah. Bringing up Thanksgiving, we're coming into holiday season, and a lot of families are completely torn up around this. There isn't a place at the table for Uncle Fred in many families until he learns to think like me, to think like the rest of the family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's painful to watch. It's painful to watch. And I know that Doug, that you had said somewhere that you moved from framing the book as a way to save the country to a way to be able to talk to your family members who have been exiled, right? Or
Well, that it's interesting you asked that question. You mentioned that because we started out. When you write a book, you really have to dig into what does it mean. You
yeah,
share it with other people and get a lot of feedback. And and I think with Braver Angels, those are the people involved with Braver Angels. I'm trying to save the country, but I think we can be more effective if we can just say, look, we'll help you with Uncle Fred rather than and forget about the country. Let's keep it at that level. One of the questions that's puzzling to me is, how did family ever become politics ever become so much more important than family?
yeah,
We all have identities that are politics, hobbies, our work, our family, our geography. Yet somehow politics has become so overwhelming in these cases, and we have a wonderful workshop for Brave Angels doing families and politics, but we have a lot of very practical steps in the book and how you can apply these. But you have to go into it with a little bit of openness, a little bit of kindness, a little dignity and respect. And we can follow the steps for you to take those conversations with
mhm,
Uncle Fred. And if nothing else, you could also just say, Uncle Fred, I know we disagree about politics, but my relationship with you is very important to me. And I hope that we won't let politics get in the way.
yeah,
And just a simple statement like that, it sort of bursts the bubble of the elephant in the room or the donkey in the room. Just sort of say, you're important, and some things are more important than politics.
yeah,
But it is so troubling, and there's data now about how yeah, there's the statistics on if would you be okay if your child married someone from the opposite political party? Well, it never used to be an issue, but now a lot of people say, yeah, that would be a problem, and these are just indicators of where we've gotten so off the rails with politics as such an important idea how we think.
yeah. There's kind of a oh, I can't. No true Scotsman kind of an energy around. If you listen to conservatives, you can't possibly be a liberal, right? And if you listen to liberals, you can't possibly be like I hear it from my liberal
Mhm.
friends,
Yeah,
and that there's a lot of shaming happening within party about
right.
you don't talk to those people, right? Um,
Well, if I could address something there, I guess first of all, I'll say the hardest group to talk to is your own people, your own team. I really believe that. The hardest group to talk to is your own team. Because, and we write about this in the book, in our stories, is people just don't understand and they think that they're going to exile you,
yeah,
right? Because you're not one of them. And when we teach in Braver Angels, there's a workshop called de-polarizing within.
yeah,
That's the hardest thing, is the pushback. Like Beth, I mean, the best thing I've ever gotten, I write about this in the book, is Beth, it's great that you are so nice, but don't you realize that, the Titanic is sinking,
yeah.
or the world is burning down, and how can you do that? How can you talk to those people?
Yeah.
Like if I have a conversation with someone who wears a red hat, it's okay, Doug.
It's a beautiful
It's
bird.
somehow gonna take weight away from the fight.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but I want to know what they're thinking. Like, if I'm gonna have an argument about, I don't know, climate change or abortion or something else, right? It's like I really want to understand their perspective, because how am I ever going to convince them of mine if I don't understand theirs? And this is an even higher level thing. How are we ever going to come up with a solution if I don't understand their point of view? Because isn't the whole point that we're going to have a stronger solution, let's say for healthcare, if we get all voices in the room? If we're just trying to do something on our own, we're not going to have the buy-in, right? We're not going to have the effectiveness that we would get from a bipartisan solution. So that's why I really strongly feel we need to get away from the us versus them, because we have so many problems to solve in this country. And we shouldn't be wasting our energy and our time and being morose about Uncle Fred when we've got a nation to improve and to fix and to strengthen.
Yeah,
You know,
we are vanquishing the other side. I mean, what's the end game for that? I mean, this is.
yeah,
I mean, are they going to go away? Or maybe if you think maybe you want to win them over, I mean, that's certainly not. But you don't win over people by shaming them and talking down at them.
yeah,
So, I mean, I think it's a little terrifying when I ask people, "What's your?" Some of the more strident people, "Well, what's your goal?" Vanquish the other side. I mean, we're going to have a civil war in this country. I mean, we cannot take this country for granted. I mean, this is we've got a 200 and almost 250-year history, and it's a beautiful country, and we've built so much. And yes, we've got problems, but we need to create a better union and build our country, and you can't take this for granted. I mean, you look around the world and other places, and whenever I've been in Rome, I walk around and you see the Roman ruins, and you think about Rome was such an incredible over how many, I don't know how many years, the Roman Empire, but it fell. And our country's gonna fall, will fall eventually. I mean, but boy, I sure hope it's not gonna happen in the next 100 or 200 years.
yeah.
This is really important. And I agree with Beth that, there's so many challenges out there, but if we can't find ways to talk to each other, to me, this is the most important challenge. We've got to find ways to talk to each other, because we're not going to solve the climate change or the national debt or the housing crisis or AI or child care or economic problems. I mean, we're not going to solve any of these problems, and not to mention our dysfunctional government, which is
Right.
it's kind of horrifying how dysfunctional our government goes. I went back and looked up when's the last time, this October 1 was important because it's beginning of the budget year for the federal government. And there the last time the Congress passed a budget on time was 1996. And not to mention, balancing the budget. I mean, our government is dysfunctional. And if we, the citizens, can't find ways to show a better way, we're not going to be able to solve any of these problems. So I consider this, this is the core problem
I
of.
would agree. I feel like if I can talk to somebody one on one in a room and they feel heard and we feel heard or I feel heard, um, I think we can solve any problem. I've seen that happen. I've come together with people through, I did a group called Common Ground Nashville, where we met every month. And I mean, certainly some of our Braver Angels workshops. I've seen where you get people who have incredibly different viewpoints, and we've solved it. I mean, I have a Christian conservative friend who I was able to explain medically appropriate abortion to him, and he got it. And he explained certain things to me about guns, and I got it. And it's less about the issue and more about, as Doug is saying, like if you can just get to that point where you respect someone and you hear them, you can solve any problem. So yeah, I mean that's what we need to do in this country. I think we need to establish a cabinet position for civility or something. Because if we could solve that issue, everything else will fall into place.
And to be clear, this is some people think this is kumbaya. This is not about kumbaya. It's not even really about compromise. It's just about having respectful conversations. And yes, if you have a respectful conversation, you actually listen to somebody, it might come up, you probably will come up with some compromises.
Yeah.
But that's really the predictor of this. The important piece is just treating people with respect, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, one thing that really struck me about Braver Angels is that they're based on a family therapy dynamic. And I think we've all been in family situations where everyone just gets on their side or their team, and whatever the problem was turns into World War VII, and people just need to learn to listen to each other again and remember we're a family, and America's a family. We're
Mhm.
a we're a dysfunctional family at this point, but we're a family. We're all going through the same things or very similar things. And if we can't talk to each other, this is not good. This is not good. We need to be
Yeah.
able to.
Bill Doherty, did most of our workshops and is one of the founders of Braver Angels, is a family therapy professor in the University of Minnesota, and he brings that perspective. But the Gottmans, who are a famous,
Yeah.
they've done a lot of work in family therapy, and when can a couple when can a couple not endure, and I'm not an expert in this, but uh, I, I've heard that one of the when the Gottmans talk about contempt, is sort of a is when a couple has sort of crossed the line, that they're not going to
Yeah.
be able to pull back. But we don't have a choice to pull back. I mean, we can we don't we can't do a divorce.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a civil war. So yes, the principles certainly apply, but we've got to hold ourselves accountable and dig in and really make we got to make this work.
Yeah. Beth, I know you're a neurologist, and I also know that staying in polarization is not good for the brain. It's not good
Correct.
for the nervous system. Um, and I know that it's very easy if you're online or to get stuck in a doom scrolling, which is it just gets worse and worse. Maybe you went to look at cat videos, but all of a sudden you're seeing these memes that say the other side is they're all demons, and um, it's not good. How would you suggest that people can stop getting sucked in, because the whole purpose of social media is to suck you in and grab your eyeballs and keep you there, right? So people make money. Is there a way to shift away from this habit?
Yeah, so I'm actually a neurology sleep doctor.
Nice.
I practice sleep full time now. I used to practice neurology and take care of people with stroke and headache and seizures and all
Yeah.
that, but I focus more on sleep. But it's certainly an issue in sleep
Yes.
because people are not sleeping at night. They're looking at their phones before they go to bed. I mean, even my husband, it's funny because he's so apolitical, and yet in the evening he'll have the news on, and I'm like, no, don't do that. I, I think clearly the biggest advice I can give to people is turn off your phone and go into nature.
Yeah.
Doug and I love being in New England because we can both get out and hike and all.
Yeah.
And I love when I hike, I don't take my phone. I really, I stay off of it for as long as I can. And I feel like my brain heals when I'm off the phone. Doug actually has a flip phone because he doesn't want to get addicted to the iPhone. I will say though that if you really love social media and you really love cat videos and you can't free yourself from it, the next best thing is to break the algorithm. And what I mean by that is I have gone out of my way to subscribe. For example, I'm a Facebook friend on, I shouldn't say this because they'll take me off of it, but like a Tennessee Firearms Association page. And I Facebook friends with some of our conservative legislator, not them directly, but their pages. And what I find by doing that is that it totally confuses social media because they stop sending me like all the left stuff or all the right stuff. They just don't know what to do with me. So they end up sending me more cat videos.
I
So,
think,
those would be my things. Go ahead, Doug.
well, I think this is really important for us to be really aware of how we're being manipulated. And I just don't do politics on social media. I do about 15 minutes a day. I like to see what friends and people are doing, but I do sometimes post stuff about our book, for instance, and then I sometimes get negative comments. But I think we need to be much more aware, and it's fascinating to me that we're now getting a lot of pushback on schools with cell phones.
Mm,
And now the next step to Jonathan Haidt, who's been an advocate for that, who's also on the Brave Angel board.
mm,
The next step for that is, okay, what are you modeling adults? What are you as the parent modeling in terms of how you're on your cell phone? Because this has got to be, we got to be more sensitive to our own behavior and how we're all being manipulated. And the way the algorithms work, as you suggested, is to get us riled up, get us in fear, get us going, and a lot of and it's all fed to the same whatever you believe, unless you can kind of play games like Beth does. And we need to be aware of how we're being manipulated, and a lot of this, by the way, these social media algorithms, this is foreign governments, this is Russia, China exploiting us. Jonathan Rauch wrote about a big demonstration in a city, pro and con, a certain idea, and people were going at it, and nobody, the organizer had been the Russian or one of the foreign governments. So to be really aware of how we're being exploited, and to be aware, and that we haven't really talked about the conflict entrepreneurs yet, but conflict entrepreneurs are people who use social media and other methods, but social media is a prime one to breed conflict. And they're
yeah,
not doing it for the country; they're doing it for power and influence.
yeah,
And we have a graphic in the book of a crocodile trying to eat an American flag. I mean, that's what we consider, they'll be coming after us, I suppose, at some point if the book is successful. People will be, who knows? But I mean, and this is tough stuff. And
yeah.
we need to stand up to the conflict entrepreneurs. We need to stand up to social media. And we need to be a little kinder with people across the politicals. But it's not just, by the way, it's not just politics. There's been a decline in sort of how people treat each other.
Mhm,
If you follow Robert Putnam, he wrote a book called Bowling Alone,
mhm,
where he talked about how people are not engaged well, it's bowling leagues he used, but it's really about Rotary clubs and churches. And then he also did a second book on called The Upswing, that looked at historical trends. And he talked about the Gilded Age back in the late 1800s, where there was really a negative period in the country, but there was an upswing to what he called more of a we versus I kind of culture, up to about 1960. And then we've been in another downswing. But so what's it going to take to have another upswing? So, you join us, read the book, get involved with Braver Angels. There's little things we can do that can create a new upswing and can create a better future for our children, for our grandchildren, and for our country.
It's so well said.
yeah. A question I have is, so much of our news media, I love this idea of conflict entrepreneurs, and that's from Amanda Ripley's book, High
Yes.
Conflict, How We Get Trapped and How We Get Out. And I've noticed that there are a number of media outlets where you supposedly get news, but it's mostly conflict entrepreneurship that's happening in, on the conservative side. We know that Fox News they're just ramping people up. And on the liberal side, MSNBC also has, like, I don't watch TV, but I'll just go and see what they're doing. And just the emotional tone turns me off right away. It's like people are yelling at each other. I said, is this a news program or is this wrestling that I'm looking at? Where do you get your news and information that that keeps the conflict entrepreneurs go over there? Where
Yeah.
where do you get it?
So there are some really great media outlets. I just want to say not all media is conflict
No.
entrepreneurish. Many is, but not
Yeah.
all. So there's some sites you can go to, like Tangle is really, really good. All Sides. There's Flip Side and there's Ground News, and there may be some others out there. And they do some really interesting things. Like Tango will have a on the left, on the right, and then what do I think? And then I think
Yeah.
it's All Sides that has like what the left is saying, what the right is saying, what the middle is saying. I think it's Ground News that has blind slots, which are really interesting because there's news that you're not even seeing on your side. In
Yes.
other words, if you just look at left media or right media, you're missing stories. And sometimes it's something really positive that Trump did. Like there was some climate change story where he was working on recycling something and the idea or reusing a product. And you wouldn't have known that if you were on the left because you would never be shown that because it's something good Trump did, right? And that the left media doesn't normally show that. And so it's really, I think, important to read that. And then we have a chapter in the book on critical thinking that I'm very, very proud of because I wrote most of that chapter. And I studied science communication when I was during COVID. And the idea is that we actually walk people through something called escape. That's a nice little mnemonic that they can use so that when they're reading a story, they should first of all figure out who might be funding it, like, the Rand Paul Association. And there's nothing wrong with Rand Paul Association, but you want to make sure then you go to another news story on the same topic from the opposite team, right? So that you can read right-sided slanted news stories and left-sided slanted news stories. It takes some time, but it's
It
really well worth
does.
it.
It was so much easier to just listen to Walter Cronkite.
We used to just have, smaller number of news media, and it did bring us together. There's no question about that, but it
Yeah.
was, probably some sort of a more monopoly approach. But what's happened now when the media environment's changed and gone online, and there's so much competition, and this and even a good story sometimes will have a headline that's sort of provocative, uh, because they're trying to get people to read the story or read the publication, and it's a very it's a really challenging news market. And
It
we
is.
say one of our quotes is if it screams, if it screams, it streams, and if it's kind, pay no mind. And that's sort of like, we found about, well, I just think about the National Governors Association when Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, did disagree better across the country. He had events. He had several events around the country, and he had one in New Hampshire. And I only found one news story about that disagree better initiative. And I went and looked up another one when I knew it was going around another part of the country. I couldn't even find a news story.
Yeah.
So, this is if the more it used to be, maybe the more respectful or whatever you were, maybe you'd get more coverage, but now you get more coverage for being more outrageous.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and and this is how this is a way a lot of media, sometimes a lot of people in media are being rewarded for bad behavior.
Yeah, and it's I was looking over my husband's shoulder the other day, and he had uh, his newspaper online, and it was the headlines, and all of them were very spiky. It's a respectable newspaper, but a beach closed down in Hawaii because of a shark. And I'm like, hold on, sharks live in the ocean. And that's one beach in Hawaii. Do you want to do a story about 1,000 other beaches were still open because the sharks weren't there,
Yeah.
right? But we're focused on this one beach with the shark. And so we get such a twisted view of what's happening. Even if, there's no bias particularly except against sharks. But if there's everything, yeah, it bleeds, it leads, it screams, it streams, and we get a very weird idea of what the world is. We get
It's
it,
true,
yeah,
and you're not going to get a news article on 10 Democrats and 10 Republicans came together to solve a local problem. It's just not newsworthy in the same way as the conflict is.
yeah,
Uh, and we just need to make it, we need to figure out a way. I think that's really important to figure out a way to get people to recognize that when they have these experiences with other people who they feel are different than them, um, it can be incredibly positive. I know I have friends on the left, I'm sure you do too, Carla, who've never met a Republican. I mean, it's crazy, you know what I mean? And similarly, Republicans who probably haven't spent time with Democrats. I had a good friend. We sang together, and it was funny because we would go to we'd go to these competitions and concerts that we were performing out together. And she was so funny. She said to me, she was conservative, and she said, "Beth, I can't wait for you to meet my liberal friend. You're gonna love her." It's just like I was her token liberal. She's never
he's
gonna.
a token.
So I think that to get more practical, I think that when we can burst these bubbles and like as Amanda Ripley illustrated in her book, I think she brought Jewish New Yorkers together with correction officers in Michigan, right, for like an exchange weekend, and they realized how much they had in common. And I mean, they ate a lot of bagels, but still, it's a very positive experience. And if we can get people to experience that for themselves, that may make a difference.
Yeah,
We use the term conflict entrepreneur, but we got another term, conflict enabler,
Mm,
where we ask people to sort of look within yourself. Are you adding to the problem by how you post on social media,
mhm.
or just what you say to people? And so this looking within yourself, we can each do a lot,
Yeah.
and just reflecting on our own selves. And I'll tell you one more story. We were down at Brave Angels in New York City last week, and this past week actually, and we were and somebody asked. We were talking about the book, and somebody stood up and said she was a massage therapist, and she people always assumed whenever they were, she obviously had a lot of interaction with the clients, and she said people assumed that she agreed with them about their politics, and she would always try to just avoid the topic, and occasionally she said it came out, and then people were angry with her, of some of her clients, that she hadn't revealed it, or maybe it's just she didn't agree, and she was looking to us for advice. She came to us for advice, so I started. We just started throwing out some of the ideas in the book, and one thing I said to her, and she came up to me afterwards, and she said, "That's exactly what I'm going to do," which was really gratifying. She said, "I said, well, one thing you could say is, you said there's more to our relationship than politics,
Hmm.
or build on that. Our relationship, it's sort of our relationship important to me, and it's more to our relationship than politics." And she came, I don't know if she talked to you, Beth, but she got all excited. And this is the work that we're doing that's very gratifying. And it is very much one-on-one, talking to people. And
Well, I want to hit on that because that reminds me of what you said earlier, Doug, about Uncle Fred. Like if you can't disagree with him, if you can't agree with him, at least tell him that your relationship with him is really important to you. And what I think is happening there is not only did you give her a way to deal with her customers, her clients, but something else I think is happening there, which is when they realize that she's a human being, right, and not a monster, then they start seeing, wait a minute, I I, I have this massage therapist and I like her, and she voted for that guy, and like I think that they start transforming into it's okay this person it's okay to think differently, and I think that's an incredibly powerful thing. When you're friends and people or people you've developed a relationship with, like the person who cuts your hair or does your nails or is a massage therapist, you realize that they're on the other side, but you don't have to hate them, and in fact you can't hate them because you've developed a relationship with them. I think that's incredibly powerful.
and you see, that's the double whammy. The first of all, she's feeling better. And second of all, hopefully that other person, oh yeah. And I think these are the little things that you can build hope with, that we talk about so many different things in our book. Little ideas. You don't have, yeah, we talk about leadership and self-leadership and a lot of big highfalutin ideas, but we talk about a lot of early, very practical, down-to-earth ideas that anyone can do, that you can integrate into your life. It doesn't involve a lot of time other than a little self-reflection.
Yeah, and we try to tell stories, and we try to be humble. I mean, we don't have all the answers, but we've learned along the way, and it's important to us to share those stories with our readers because it's through those stories that I think they pick up on the empathy of the other side and of the other person, just like we have.
Hmm. I also have to say, going to Braver Angels events, which is very easy to do. You can either go in your town or go online. Um, and you're surrounded by people who are trying to change what's happening. Just that, just being there with those people can bring you hope. Um, and I've been in a couple of debates where the I didn't agree with the debate topic, right? I was like, I went there like this, like, what am I going to hear tonight? And I heard just wonderful things from the other side, and I had to just really think about myself and my whole behavior. Do you know what I mean? It's like a way to grow as a person. Everyone thinks, when am I going to achieve enlightenment? I'm like, go sit with people who aren't like you and listen to them. Then you're
Absolutely.
enlightened.
I ran a COVID workshop in Nashville before I left, and we brought supporters of the public health response together with, we called them questioners of the public health response. And one of the things I learned there that has stuck with me to this day is that when you think about community and keeping a community healthy, for some of us, it was eradicating every last case of COVID, but for other people, it was keeping the schools open and it was keeping the businesses open. And it was like, I remember in California, like people not being able to walk on the beach or run in the park because of the concern
We
of the
couldn't get
COVID.
library books.
I'm sorry,
How
what?
do you, we couldn't get library books because it
Right,
wasn't known
right.
that you don't pass it with your hands. So
I
yeah,
had to see my dad, who was, in his last years of life. I
yeah,
had to sit with him through a window thing, and it was only when he went into hospice that they allowed me to visit with him. So,
wow.
yeah, I mean, those stories. I mean, we didn't have enough Kleenex boxes in the room for that. that workshop. So yeah, I mean, different things mean different things are nuanced. As Amanda Ripley likes to say in High Conflict, you need to complicate the narrative
Yeah.
and realize that things are more nuanced
Yeah.
than they're not binary, they're not black and white.
And check your own prejudices, because we all have them. Well, I want to thank both of you for being here and also mention your Substack, which it's a free Substack, right? What's the name of it?
Together across differences,
All right.
and if you want a
I will
website,
put it in the show
yeah,
notes.
yeah,
So I'm going to
yeah,
put
it's
all the books that we talked about in the show notes today. And I want to thank you again for coming here. And also, Doug, do you talk about your Braver Politics work on your Substack?
Yes, I've been doing a lot of work with the New Hampshire legislature. It's been really gratifying. We've had 6 workshops with the legislature, and we have some we have some articles in the Substack and whatnot. So and people can reach out to either of us, and we'll be happy to share more about that.
Okay.
So I just come up with a final thought for me. We put a lot of quotes in the book, and there's a lot of despair and confusion, and people are wondering, what to do out there. But I'll put a quote in from Anne Frank. How wonderful is it that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world?
and I'll
Yes.
just say, believe there is good, be the good in my shirt. So yeah. Yeah. And be kind, right? Everyone's fighting a tough battle. And
Yeah.
be kind. Like, I need to be kind to my friends on the left who I feel are riled up and understand where they're coming from, as much as I need to be kind to my conservative friends.
Yeah.
So let's just all be kind to each other, regardless of where we put ourselves on the spectrum.
Well, the Dalai Lama said, be kind whenever possible. It's always possible.
Here you go.
Well, thanks so much, Beth and Doug. Thanks for your work.
You're so
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time.